I left my binder. I was so tired
Yes,
of the
but
binder.
that, at this time of the year, that's your security blanket. I learned that. In the years I were there, I learned this is the security blanket.
Or it's the cause of a lot of dreams, not good ones. What I know is I have too much paper, that's all. Too much paper.
All righty. Oh, you know what I could use? I could use water.
Good morning. Okay. I'm starting again, or are you starting? You tell me.
When you start.
Okay. Yeah, because you're much deeper than I am. You have so many areas to cover.
Yeah.
I just got that one little school system thing.
One minor detail.
Oh my goodness. The one that everybody focuses on is like, Lord. I'm glad we got microphones because they are far. They are way back there. And this will be ours, right? Or we're using
Yeah,
a
my
hand.
voice is pretty big, but
So we're using a handheld or these?
The
Those are for the
handheld.
mics. The one on the camera. The mic stands are
Camera.
volume for the. Yeah.
So I don't need to pick a mic up then
Well, I guess that mic's the speaker for.
when you go out? Okay.
I have, hello. Good morning, everybody. Can I pull everybody together? Good morning. I invite you to come, those in the back, I invite you to come forward. We would love it if you would come a little forward. Yes, thank you. That would be wonderful. Nice turnout. Happy. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Agnes Pier, and I'll be your moderator for today. Today is the budget forum, and the budget forums are nonpartisan events intended to present information on the town budget. Presenters will be the town manager and the superintendent of schools. I will be a moderator and will officiate, and a timer will assist. I will ask, after I do the ground rules, you will understand why we want to do that. All right, the ground rules are the following. We are going to encourage questions from the audience, but I think we'll kind of hold those towards the end, but this is to give you discussion. This is supposed to be back and forth, should be discussion, so please feel free to ask questions. The ground rules are the following. Questions may be submitted in writing or asked. I will recognize the person speaking and may restate the question as necessary. A person may ask one question at a time until all others have had an opportunity to ask. 1 minute is allowed for each question to be asked. Time limits will be observed. These are the time limit cards. Attendees are expected to act in a respectful manner. The moderator will have the responsibility for enforcing time limits. The audience may ask questions, but statements from the audiences are not permitted in this format. In order for everyone to hear the questions and answers, please refrain from having conversations in the audience. If necessary, please step outside. Thank you. Now, to begin, I think we will begin with Dr. Hill.
Thank you.
We flipped a coin and
I lost again. I lose every year. Right.
Oh, no, I've been waiting for this. This is great.
This is what you've been waiting for?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
so
do
this
you wanna
way,
use this?
I don't know if this is going to interfere. Excuse me, gentlemen. Should I use this while this is here or no?
Yeah.
Use both? Okay. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Terrell Hill, Superintendent of Schools, and I'm going to just give you a brief overview of how we came to our budget proposal for the school system this year. And I'll start off by saying what I've said each of the prior 2 years, that as, you know, when I get ready to prepare a budget, I always take into consideration where can I make changes, cuts if necessary. There's almost always cuts, as far away from the student as possible. So I try my best to stay away from the classroom situation as much as possible. That is not always the case in terms of being able to do it, but we try as best we can. Other things I take into consideration, what's going on in our town, what's going on in society this year. So while we're past the pandemic, I've put that in my head, so if you disagree, we just disagree. I am done with the pandemic. I know COVID-19 will stay and float around forever, but I'm just tired of hearing pandemic, personally. We are in a time, though, where there's high inflation for so many products. Our groceries and other bills have continued to go up, gas. So I always keep that in mind. I also share with the community that when I'm doing the budget, it's not like I'm one of those superintendents who lives over there and I do a budget for a place over here. I live here too. So if I do anything that would raise the budget, Peter has yet to give me a superintendent discount. I don't get a discount, right? So in case anyone's thinking that, there's no discount for the superintendent, there's no special hookup, I don't get a tax break, I get nothing. He expects me to pay, and I know he's watching. So, and I also have a wife to answer to, because she pays the bills in the house, and she does not want to see a bill go up, because she'll be like, what dummy thought of this tax increase? And I have to raise my hand in the kitchen. That would be this dummy right here, honey. So I keep all that in mind. So to say all that is to say that this is very personal to me. When I do the budget each year, it's not something I take lightly, and I start doing it actually in early October. Early October, I'm doing this. I'm working on this budget. So we put together all of our legal responsibilities. Those are all our contracts. We have 6 bargaining units for the district, from the teachers, administrators, custodians, food service, safety monitors, nurses, and our administrative professionals. So all of our bargaining units, those contracts are contracts. None of them go backwards from year to year. There are always increases. So we put together all those. Those are the things that we have to do, right? I tell people, what is it going to cost us guys just to roll over and do business this fall? So those are the first 6 contracts we consider. Then we consider all the other contracts that we have to keep things going with transportation, certain technology, software that we have to pay for, equipment we have to pay for. There are some things that we have to do in order for us just to do business. And when we put all that together, we usually get a percentage that none of you would like at all. So this year it was well over 6%. I knew I could not come to the district with 6+%, so that means we had to start cutting. No one likes to cut. When I talk to my school leaders and I ask them to, offer up some cuts from their individual buildings, let me know. No one likes to cut. That's just, the creature and the culture of education. So I end up having to be typically the bad guy and say, well, I can look at this and see we don't need this, or I'll look at something and say, where can we do without and still be able to do our business? And no matter what people think in any budget, there's always some fat. I know it gets personal and emotional to people, but there's always some fat. There's some area where you could cut and you could still do business just fine. And so those are the areas that we cut. And as we proceed to go through the budget process, we landed on a 4.84% increase. I know that number is higher than what we're used to seeing, particularly in the last 6 or 7 years. However, if any of you are aware of what's going on in other towns, we are definitely, in this Hartford area, one of the lower 3s in terms of the percentage increase. The superintendents in the Hartford area, there's 40-something of us, we meet every month and we talk about this. There is a shared document with us looking at our budget proposals, right? It's been shifting for some. Some have had to go back to their boards. They're just discussions. I'm thankful our board voted to pass this on to the town council, and the town council approved it. But our 4.84, as large as it looks, is much lower than a lot of my colleagues who are at 5-something, 6-something, 7-something. Even one of my colleagues is at 11. But there are definitely, most of them are averaging in that 6 to 7 range. So percentage increases all over are just pretty high this year. So that's why we're where we're at, and I think this budget was very responsible and considerate of all of you in town and all of our families and our students and our staff. I don't think that we'll take any losses or there'll be a decline in any of the services that we're able to provide our students. And so this is where we're at, 4.84. Thank you.
You can keep that. Peter? Peter, would you like to do yours?
Absolutely. If I can turn on the microphone?
It's on, it's on.
Good morning, folks. It's a pleasure again to be at the Senior Center to provide a brief overview of the budget that the town council adopted a week ago, and that's going to go to the referendum for the voters a week from today, on the 9th. And so this has been an interesting year for preparing the budget. As you all know, there's been upward pressures in terms of costs, and that's across the board, similar to what we're seeing in our own households. The town and the Board of Education is also seeing those upward costs. We're also seeing increased demand for different types of services. When the town council held a public hearing early in the budget process, there was a number of residents that came out expressing concerns and desires that monies be put towards our safety services area, be it emergency dispatch, our ambulance services, emergency medical services. And so what this budget that the town council adopted reflects the need to meet those service demands and desires. And so what you'll see in the proposed budget, there are a number of new positions that are proposed. We are reallocating some part-time dollars to go towards full-time positions. For example, we're adding, proposed to add a police officer, one emergency 911 dispatcher. So that way there is there's 2 emergency 911 dispatchers on duty at all times, 24 hours a day. And because in years past we haven't. We've only had staffing levels to have one dispatcher on in that midnight hours overnight hours between 11 o'clock and 7. But with the increased calls, be it through the fire department, the ambulance, or the police department, there's a need to make sure that that service is bolstered. There's monies here within the budget for an additional public works maintainer. As our infrastructure gets older, we need to creating a demand. We also have added over the last 3 to 4 years in additional roadways as our town has grown, and so that's created a demand. There's also reinvestments in our facilities, such as here at LP Wilson Community Center, all of our different boards and Board of Education facilities and town education facilities, all are getting older, and just like our own homes, we have to replace roofs, boilers, and so there are funds built into this budget to do that as well. There's also monies to purchase an additional dial-a-ride vehicle for the senior center and transportation. There's monies to make improvements to the food bank, which is behind us here, and many of you are aware of. There's monies to make improvements there to increase efficiency and storage. There's funds also to make some improvements at Gosley Pool. Gosley Pool, it's amazing how time flies. Gosley Pool the pool basin itself was rebuilt about 20 years ago, and so now that needs to also have some repairs as well. On the positive side, we've had significant economic development growth. As you know, as you drive around town, there's significant growth happening not only on Dayhill Road, but up in the Rainbow neighborhood off of International Drive and Kennedy Road in Hayden Station. So that's generating increased value on the grand list. So the grand list, when I use the term grand list, that's our taxable assessed value, including all of our homes, the commercial properties, and then personal property for the commercial properties, not for our own homes. And so we've seen a significant growth. Actually, it's outside of our norm. in terms of our history in the last 4 to 5 years. And so what that's afforded town council to do is present a budget to you that meets the school board's needs. It increases services and bolsters services on the town side to meet demand, but also allows for the mill rate to change 1%. So there's a 1% change in the mill rate if this budget was to be adopted by the voters next Tuesday. Also included in the budget are 2 items that I wanted to highlight. The town council has increased the tax relief for seniors based upon income eligibility. So they've increased that dollar amount, and they also have increased or are working on increasing the tax relief for military veterans. So that is for, again, those are income-based increases. So those are some of the highlights of the budget, and I'm glad to say that we continue to, over the last 15 years, the average change in the mill rate year over year has been less than 2%. Some years it's a little bit higher, some years it's been 0, but when you look back over the course of about 15 years, we're just under 2% on average year over year. So I'm going to stop there. There's a lot more in this budget, but I'd rather, Dr. Hill and I would rather take questions from you, and so I'll turn it back over to Agnes.
Thank you very much, Peter. I guess I have to use this. Thank you very much, Peter. Now, we'll begin our questions. Yes, here's our first question.
Peter, the maintenance, I'm just wondering, you're going to add somebody to the force, or the budget includes another employee. How many actual employees are there fixing trucks? I mean, it's the specifics.
Yeah. So when specifically for, the question was how many staff members do we have? I'm going to rephrase that in public works, but also she asked specifically for like maintenance of vehicles. And so the town, we have 3 mechanics for our for town. We outsource maintenance of all of our police vehicles. We contract that out. But all the heavy equipment that we have in town, we have three public works mechanics. We have approximately, in terms of full-time employees at Public Works, we probably have just under 30 full-time employees that they do everything from road maintenance to parks and grounds maintenance. They do all of the pruning of trees and removal of hazardous trees that are on town properties. Right now their big activity is street sweeping, and so we have to sweep all the town-owned streets, and that's over well over 160 miles of roadway in town that we are by state law required to sweep at least once a year. And so that takes us about 6 weeks, depending upon the weather. It takes us about 6 weeks, and we devote between 3 and 4 members of our public works staff to do that. So this just gives you a little bit of indication of the staff levels that we have at the Public Works Department doing maintenance type of work.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. Yes, next question.
Dr. Hill, in the beginning you said when you do a budget, you stay out of the classroom. What does that mean?
Oh, thank you. So I said I do my best to start looking at cuts or ways to save money as far away from the classroom as possible, meaning the core of our business is to teach students. So if I start cutting in the classroom, right, then we're attacking our core. So I need my teachers in the room, providing high quality instruction to my students. And the students need, whatever equipment, textbooks, and whatever other resources they need in the classroom. So I'll give you an example. When I cut some of our technology budget, right, and I know my technology department does not like that, but I really looked hard at all the technology that we had. Stuff that we need to run the district, right, like our student database, those are things we have to have, right? That's how we report back and forth with the state. But I found that there were some particular software packets that just a few teachers we're using, right? So I have 380 certified staff across the district, and 5 people are using this software that's costing me $8,000 here, $10,000 here, $3,000 here. So when you take a bunch of those, it's like, why do we need that? And I just asked those questions. And it was more personal with people than it was about our students, right? 5 teachers using something across the whole district is not something that we need. So those are inefficiencies. And so those are the things when I say away from the classroom. It didn't harm the student. It didn't prevent the teacher from providing high-quality instruction. But you stack up 10 or 12 of those things that, we start getting a significant number that we can pull and make a savings on the budget. That's what I mean by as far away from the classroom as possible. Mhm. Yes, sir.
Thank you. The next question? Anyone else? No? Please, go ahead.
I know I couldn't ask again, so.
Yeah.
The maintenance, how many, as they have contracts to begin with in the supervisor education, how many contracts besides yourself are there in the maintenance? I'm only worried because we are getting more traffic because of those trucks, truck 18-wheelers. I called the police last night because it's just crazy.
So, if I understand the question, how many union contracts or
Yeah.
collective?
Like he has professional sense, his main thing that he says, they have to be increased. We know that because they want to get paid and they don't want to go somewhere else, and we don't want them to go anywhere else.
Right. So we have, on the general government side, we have 3 different collective bargaining groups. One is our police officers. We have our emergency dispatchers also are in a collective bargaining group. And then we have primarily our public works, and part of our clerical or administrative staff are in the Teamsters Union. We have about a little bit less than 200 employees on the general government side, and approximately half of them are non-union and half of them are in union group. It's very unusual for local government in Connecticut to be split that way, but we have, so to answer your question specifically, we have 3 different collective bargaining groups that represent roughly 100 or so employees.
Cool. Yes, David?
A question for Peter. I'm glad to hear about the extra dispatcher, the evening hours, because incidents happen 24/7. You can have a heart attack or something anytime. You really want things to make sure you get through. I know there's been a concern about ambulance services and EMT to make sure that if someone is having an emergency, when they call 911, they're going to get somebody in Windsor, first of all, as a dispatcher, which now more likely, but also that we get the ambulance services there. You could speak to that.
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, there has been challenges in terms of our emergency medical services, which is not restricted to Windsor. That is a regional and nationwide challenge in terms of the number of paramedics and certified emergency medical technicians, or EMTs. There is less certified paramedics and EMTs in the state now there had been in the past. So in Windsor, the ambulance service is provided by a not-for-profit organization, Windsor EMS, and the town has traditionally provided a very small cash contribution to support their services. We do provide quote-unquote in-kind services, so they're able to work out of the new fire station on Bloomfield Avenue. We cover some of their incidental insurance costs, but there has been a challenge in making sure that there are available ambulances. And so what this proposed budget does is include monies to be able to have, right now they strive to have 2 ambulances on duty from 7 o'clock in the morning until approximately 11 o'clock at night. And then overnight they have 1 ambulance basically between that 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock until 7 o'clock in the morning. So what this budget does is add funds so that they can have additional ambulance on duty during the peak times of the day. So to Mr. Furry's question, we'd love to be able to make sure the ambulance is coming out of Windsor at all times. That is almost, unfortunately, it's almost impossible with the nature of that business. Because it takes, if an ambulance transports someone to Hartford Hospital, depending on the type of call, that could be anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half before that ambulance is back available in service, just because of the turnaround time for that particular ambulance. So we do rely on neighboring communities and neighboring agencies. Just like we will at times, if we have availability, we'll go to Bloomfield, we'll go to Windsor Locks to provide assistance, but we have that reciprocal or mutual aid response where those communities, or East Windsor, you may see East Windsor ambulance in town as well. So it's a pretty dynamic service delivery system, and so what this budget does is provide some additional dollars. The ambulance basically gets their funding through insurance, through either Medicaid, Medicare, or private insurance. Unfortunately, those reimbursement rates are not anywhere close to covering the cost of an actual call. So a cardiac arrest or cardiac event is, my numbers off the top of my head, that could be approximately a $1,500 to $1,800 cost for the ambulance to provide that service for that call. Their reimbursement is probably 60% of that, in that range. So that is so they've got a structural deficit. If you heard me say that in years past, there's a structural deficit in terms of revenue versus the cost. And so I'm appreciative of the town council recognizing the importance of EMS services and for them to put dollars in the budget to provide that critical service to all of us.
Yes, question over here.
Yeah, concerning the ambulance service, maybe a month or two ago, my wife fell. Actually, she didn't fall, she slipped out of bed. And so I called the fire department thinking that they would come, and then I found out where I called the police department. And they said, and then they called the ambulance service and they came. And they were there for 10 minutes. It charges $219 for about 10 minutes. To me, that's not fair. So I was wondering, I didn't hear this whole thing about the budget and what's going on, but, you know, to charge $219 for somebody to slip out of bed and, you know, to pick them up.
Sir, could you give us your question? We're requesting no statements, but could you give us a question?
The question is why they charge me.
Okay.
So not knowing the particulars of that situation, in general, the rates that are charged are not set by the Windsor EMS. There are state charges, there's a state rate that gets, that all, depending upon the type of call, are set. Now, if you're getting transported between like say Windsor Rehab and you're going to another facility, those are Windsor Ambulance does not do those, so those may be more at a market rate, but most of the calls that are emergency calls that are responded to are set by the state of Connecticut. The reimbursement rate is set by the state of Connecticut.
Thank you. Marilyn?
I'd like to ask Dr. Hill to talk about the health services for students in Windsor, and particularly the mental health services that we have for students in Windsor, and have an increase in the number of counselors needed, or how do you see that?
The question is for Dr. Hill to address the health services. Is there any increase, and on the mental health services? So,
Thank you. So first I can say, no, we have not increased our counseling staff. We're fine with the number of counselors we have, as well as the other support staff, so school social workers, school psychologists. So Windsor's actually I've said this, and I know it's like the worst thing to say when you're an educator, right, to say we really are in a good place. But Windsor has a very good staffing situation when it comes to all of those support systems. Another piece that we've added, and it's very important to me, and so is the SEL employees that we have, SEL being social emotional learning. You've heard me mention it in the last 2 years. You probably hear it more and more on your televisions, you hear it in communities and newspapers, but as a result of the pandemic, I know I had to say the word, but as a result of the pandemic, folks have started to pay attention more to mental health issues, particularly with our young folks. It's something that we kind of overlooked in schools. We just kind of like, unless something was extreme and a student acknowledged, we just didn't know. But now we know that there's more that's going on with students, different traumatic incidents. I will say all the time that everything that happens in the world comes to school because it just happens, right? I don't know that it's fair all the time. You know, the gentleman here said fair. I feel the same way. It's like we got to fix the whole world in schools, but we have all the staff that we need. We're also always working with outside agencies, and so we recommend some to families because we can't do it all, but we will support families in making connections to outside agencies. And we have some that are through our Office of Family and Community Partnerships that they are working in our schools, not as a clinical service directly for us, but there are folks who can provide that in as much as the family decides to go further, but they just do general work with our students. So we're always utilizing our staff, as I said, the counselors, the social workers, school psychologists, and our SEL staff to ensure that we're trying to watch our students as closely as possible, support them with their various mental health needs as best we can. So yeah, they're funded fine. The SEL employees that I have right now, they are all funded under the ESSER funds. You know, those are the rounds of funds that came from the government during the pandemic. They were supposed to end this school year. The government extended for another year the use of these ESSER funds. I'm thinking and hoping they're going to extend another year, even though we really don't have a lot of monies to go beyond that, because we've been pretty vigilant about spending the monies as we said we were going to and doing the things we said we were going to do. And I did not want to hire an enormous amount of staff under these funds because, like many of my colleagues across the state and country, they're going to run into a fiscal cliff because some of the bigger districts, you can imagine, when they got this influx of millions, they hired, as you're saying, you know, needed folks, particularly around student mental health issues and concerns and supports, but they're not going to have the monies after this next school year. So currently, the 23-24 is the last year that we're supposed to be able to use these funds. So we had 1 year added on, and they're going to have to figure out how to keep employed, you know, in some districts, you know, well over 100 employees. We have about 9 that I'm really concerned about, but I'm already thinking of ways to make cuts in other areas to keep those employees because I think it's very important and it's one of the initiatives that I support, and it's big for me as a superintendent. So the district knows that the SEL work that we're doing is really big. We're also, I can say probably at this point, we're a leader in the state of Connecticut. So our SEL coordinator for the district is Dr. Michael Mallory, and he's housed in Sage Park Middle School, but he's responsible for all the SEL work in the district. He's called, you know, continuously by the state to come and present to other districts or present at state meetings because of the work that we're doing. I wanted Windsor to be out front. I want us to be the leader. And I said, warts and all. It doesn't mean we're doing it perfectly, but I wanted to say, Windsor, this is important for Windsor, and we're going to do it, and others can learn from us, and that's what's happening. But we're good right now. Thank you.
Yes, there's a question back there. Heidi?
I have a question on the town operating budget increase. It's a little over $4 million, and I just wondered if there's a more specific breakdown for that goes for. I know you mentioned the increase in staffing, but I just wondered if you had something more specific on that.
Could you repeat that question? I didn't get it.
So I believe the question is on the general government side, there's a dollar increase of approximately $4 million year over year. And what are some of, if I could detail some of those, those drivers of that $4 million. So I will see if I can highlight those, if I can just make so on the town side, we have some significant increases, unfortunately. Some of the drivers include health insurance for our employees. Our health insurance is going up 17%, which is approximately $560,000 year over year. Our retirement and pension plans, and I want to note that we no longer have, for new employees, we no longer have a traditional defined benefit plan. We have a defined contribution plan or a 401k type of plan. And so even with those changes that we've made over the years, our retirement costs are increasing 16%, or approximately $830,000 year over year. So just there is approximately 1.3 million, a little over $1.3 million just due to those two facts. Our utilities are increasing $250,000 on the town side. We have increased our investment in road repaving. The cost of replacing our large pieces of equipment in public works has increased notably over the last 3 or 4 years, and so we're putting more dollars in, not to buy additional equipment, but really to replace what we have, and just the cost of that has increased. But we also have built into the budget approximately $1.1 million of that will go towards one-time costs. As just a reminder that every 5 years the state of Connecticut requires all properties in town to be what we call revalued, so reassessed. Used to be 10, you're correct, and probably about 15 years ago the state law changed, and so it's every 5 years now, which has its pluses and minuses to that. So this is a little bit of a dynamic approach that the town council and staff are taking this year, is to increase the one-time expenditures for this fiscal year, knowing that a year from now there's going to be significant pressures on the tax front because of revaluation. All of our homes have appreciated substantially over the course of the last 5 years when we did the last revaluation in 2018. So right now, so that $1 million that's built into the proposed budget will provide some mitigation to the mitigate the tax increase for a year from now. But I want us to be very clear and very cautious in that it's a slight mitigation, because property values have increased so much. Residential properties on average are projected to increase approximately 30% since 2018.
Yeah.
And even though the commercial properties overall will probably maintain their value, they're not going to increase anywhere near that 30%. So the residential is going to rebalance, if you will. That's the purpose of property revaluation every 5 years, is to make sure that properties are assessed where the marketplace is at that given time. So we have $1 million built in. We won't need that $1 million for those same projects a year from now. And those monies then are the town council is able to then shift those dollars to our regular ongoing operating costs. So the council will not have to raise that much more funds. So it does provide a little bit of cushion as they move into a year from now for the fiscal year 25 budget. So you'll hear much more about property revaluation over the course of the next 9 months. And it's it is gonna be I can't put it any other way other than it's gonna be a substantial impact, depending on your home, how much your home has changed from 2018 to 2023 if you are a homeowner.
Do we have a question here?
I don't need this as yet, but someday I will be using the senior transportation minibus, and I'm wondering if you've given any thought to having this be an electric vehicle. I stood out in the rain at the sustainability fair all Saturday afternoon, and I have to ask.
So, yes, we are looking at how we prepare for the electrification of the automobile industry, to be quite frank. It's very clear in the next 5 to 10 years is that many of the new vehicles will be electric vehicles. So there are some manufacturers now that are building those buses with electric, non-combustion engineering or electric. Right now, we are going to buy. We're looking at either a hybrid, because there's not that many of the manufacturers that are making the buses of that size electric. There is a premium for, as you all know, for EV vehicles. So we are beginning to do that planning on a town-wide basis. We're looking at how we can, what the cost will be for the infrastructure, because we'll have to install those EV charging stations for town fleet. And so over the course of the next 12 to 18 months, there's a planning effort so that we're prepared for that ultimate migration to EV chargers, at least for the smaller vehicles. Not sure we're going to get to that with the larger, heavy equipment. That's probably quite a ways down the road.
We had another question? Yes.
Mr. Souza, I admit to you and everyone here, I don't know what debt service is. Could you explain that?
Good question.
Debt service is just like when we had a mortgage on your home. So what we do is the town council will approve borrowing for major projects. So that way there, it spreads out those costs over the course of, we try to borrow money between a 12 and a 15-year term. So by state law, we cannot borrow, except for in very special cases, we can't have a amortization or a term for longer than 20 years. So we have traditionally tried to do between 10 and 15. So right now our average debt term is about 12 years. And so that's for, if we do a major road, right now the town council approved the construction of Baker Hollow Road off of Marshall, Phelps, and Day Hill. So that money will be borrowed over a 15-year term and paid back over a 15-year term. If we do a roof at one of the schools, we borrow that, whatever monies we can't get returned back from a state grant. So that's what debt service is. Town council has a policy that the debt service amount that we pay annually for principal and interest repayment will be in that 6 to 8% of our overall general fund budget. And so this, we continue that practice. I believe going into FY24, our debt service ratio, what we call a debt service ratio, will be approximately 7% of the overall operating budget, which meets all of the credit rating agencies' guidelines.
So that's the interest you're paying?
Interest and principal and interest combined.
Another question? I have a question, Peter. Great Pond Improvement District is a special taxing district. The change in that is 27%. Could you please address that?
You ask me that question every year.
I know I do.
Let's see if I can remember that. So Great Pond Village is a special taxing district. It is the former combustion engineering campus on Day Hill, on the west end of Day Hill Road. And so this is a revenue sharing arrangement, and the increase year over year is driven by the fact that those property values, they've had economic development growth there. And so there's more property being taxed. And so 50% of the new tax that's being generated, 50% stays with the town of Windsor to be able to go to whatever cost that the town has for general operations. And then 50% of the revenue goes back to the Great Pond Village taxing district to pay for the public infrastructure, to pay for the roads, the water, the sewer lines. And so that is the arrangement. Again, that was there to create and induce economic development. And so they've had substantial projects that are happening under construction now, and hopefully that will continue over the course of the next 5 to 7 years.
I suggest people take a ride out on Dano Road. Yes, is there anyone else? Yes, an individual over here.
I'm not sure if this is something you address or not, but I was watching the news yesterday, they're talking about these chemicals that are in the water, PFAS as they call them, and it's very dangerous from what they were saying. I don't want to go into a big discussion about it, but I'm just wondering, have you addressed this type of issue, or is that a state issue? And can we find out what about these PFAS, how much they're in the water here in this area? Because this is a very big problem, a very dangerous problem.
Factories and everything.
Right. So the question, nope, that it's a the question was the
PFAS.
water quality, is water quality being impacted by chemicals referred to as PFAS?
Yes.
And those are, it's a significant, as the gentleman noted, a significant concern and issue across the country and most likely the world. So right now, there is no federal regulations regarding PFAS.
Right.
And so those are they're currently being reviewed and reviewed by the Environmental Protection Agency at the federal level to set a nationwide standard, they call it parts per, in this case, parts per trillion, in drinking water. The majority of Windsor residential properties are served by the Metropolitan District Commission. And so the Metropolitan District Commission has 2 significant reservoirs in the Bark-Hampstead area, and that's where we receive our drinking water after it's been treated predominantly at the West Hartford Water Treatment Plant, if I've got my geography correct. So the Metropolitan District Commission has begun to do periodic testing of that water supply, and as my understanding is that they are within the guidelines, and I make a distinction between the regulatory requirements and guidelines, because there is not nationwide regulations. There are guidelines that in regulations that each state will present. So we'll have, so MDC's water, as to my knowledge, is within those guidelines set. One of the bigger concerns that will develop is those folks that are on private wells. Right. And so that's really where the EPA regulations are going to, you say, will evolve down to, or devolve down to the state and local level, is what does the national parts per billion or parts per trillion, and so that's going to take probably 3 to 5 years, I'm going to guess, for those regulations to be codified. There is you will hear concerns about PFAS in our bodies of water, and so the state of Connecticut has done some periodic testing of different bodies of water, and unfortunately, PFAS does exist in lakes and streams And so it will be something certainly to watch into the horizon for sure.
Anyone else? Anyone else? Yes.
I'm still going back to the budget. Thank you for being here, number one. And number two, according to that, it'll have to be two questions. When was the thing changed to 5 years for the the house?
Revaluation.
Revaluation. And who decided and what was the cost comparison to having, because I got the survey in the mail, from doing the survey themselves to hiring somebody, because they gave us 10 days, and you all got a survey
Right.
of Lawrence Homes, and it's like 10 days, I got it, that way I only have 5 days, because when I got it, it was only 5 days, and I went to the assessor's office, never mind, just a question.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone has the form and they hadn't had a chance to fill it out, you can certainly fill that out. So you still fill that out if you misplaced it. I had to fill mine out as soon as I got it because I know I'd misplaced it. It would have gone in that drawer you have in your kitchen and it would have been completely lost. So that, going back to the question was, when did the state law change regarding, it used to be 10 years versus 5 years. I'm gonna have to go back, it's probably been about between 15 and 20 years. And so I probably was closer to 20 years since
20.
I'm not,
John's been dead for 10.
so it's been,
That's our marker.
so I have certain markers, I don't have that marker, but I have certain markers.
She got
but,
it. She got
But
it.
it's supposed 15 to 20 years ago when it changed.
Yeah.
To 5 years.
Built mine in
And that was state law,
2006.
the town has, the towns could do it every year. Certainly that would be very costly. And so and I'm gonna make it even more confusing for you. So every 10 years, the state requires that the municipality either does a physical inspection of every property, or we can use a combination of a physical inspection or that form that was sent out to all the property owners. If you fill that form out and it looks like, yep, okay, you still have 3 bedrooms and 2 baths and 1 car, then we do not have to go and visit that. But if you've gotten a building permit or you've done some other improvement in that time frame, if our records need to be recalibrated, then there'll be someone that will come out and visit your property and do a 15-minute inspection. But the vast majority of the homes will not be able to have to be visited.
So how much was it cost?
The cost for the overall revaluation process is approximately $115,000 to $120,000. And that is, the town council actually sets aside approximately $20,000 a year, each year, so that in 5 years, they'll have approximately $100,000 that will go towards the cost. Town's assessing staff will do part of that work. So part of that work to reduce the overall cost of the contractor. And so we have three individuals that work on our town in the assessor's office, and so they will assist in doing the revaluation to try to keep down the cost, that $120,000.
Wow. Yes, David?
I just quickly looked up when that happened, 2004.
That was a long time ago.
Pretty good guess.
Very close.
And I didn't get a survey, that's the first time I've gotten a survey, so that's why I'm questioning that.
Yep.
Right,
They used to just tell you.
Yeah.
They-
yeah.
Right.
They used to just say, your house has gone up X amount.
Yes.
This is
Yeah.
what you owe us. Period.
Because they come out and look. Are there another question? Any other questions? Dr. Hill, would you like to say one more thing before we wrap it up?
First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you guys for your continued support for the schools, and thank you for coming out today for your questions. I'm always looking for ways to improve, and again, as I said, the person who lives here, and I ain't going nowhere. So I want to ensure that we are working together as best as possible, and that I am not only looking out for the children of Windsor, but also for the residents of Windsor as well, from my area of responsibility. Again, thank you.
Peter, would you like to say something before we wrap?
So, this is I believe, a very responsible budget. It's a 1% change in the mill rate. It builds upon what all of you have supported for many, many years, which is quality services and reinvestment in your community. So, I believe the town council looked at this budget preparation season over a 2 or 3 year period. It simply wasn't looking at what's gonna happen for FY '24. They took a look out over 2 or 3 years, and knowing that property revaluation is coming. So I think it provides good level of services for the Board of Education and general government. There's a lot of great things happening in the community, and this budget continues to support that. So thank you very much for coming out, and thank you very much to Win TV for
Thank you,
taping
guys.
this. This will be replayed in the coming days between now and the referendum. So if anybody wants to see a great repeat of this rerun of the show, you can see that.
Is it too late for one final question?
No, it's not at all.
Is the tax rate, 70% for your home, is that being increased to 75%? I heard something about that.
There is a proposal at the state's General Assembly to increase the assessed value from 70% of fair market to 75%. From what I understand from different groups that monitor the general activity at General Assembly, that probably will not survive this session. Doesn't mean that it won't come back in future years, but from the indications that I've heard at least, is that probably does not have enough votes to pass for this session.
Thank you. There are 2 more budget forums. There will be one this evening at Pequannock School at 6:30. There will be another one at 3:30 Windsor, 3:30 Community Center, the Windsor Community Center at 3:30 Windsor Avenue at 6:30 tomorrow on the 3rd. The series of the forums are sponsored by the League of Women Voters and Windsor CT Votes. And the purpose is to provide information to voters. Our organizations do not support or endorse a position on the budget. They do support an informed electorate and encourage each citizen to vote. We please ask you to go out and spread the word, to have them come to the budget forums if anyone has any questions at all. There's also a great deal of information on our website. If you have more questions that you'd like to, or you need more information about the budget. I actually used it last night. Lots of good tools. Thank you very much for everybody for coming. Please spread the word.
Thank you so much. You like do this professionally. Wow.
Oh, yeah, right. Next, you're going to have questions tonight at Pequannock School.
I'm going to have questions tonight.
You're going to have questions tonight at
Okay.
Pequannock School.
I'm ready.
They will be there.
They will be ready.
That's when Pequannock School, that's when the parents oftentimes come out.
Yep.
At Pequannock.
So there's going to be questions about the budget, there's going to be questions about Pequannock.
No, they'll be good.
Yeah. Because I know my parents. They are very school specific here in Windsor. I watched this for 21 years. I'm like, that's not the budget, that's Pequannock. All right, let's go to that.
I know.
I got it. I'll be ready.
I know you got it. I know you got it. It's like, this is the senior group.
Yes, this is the cool group,
And then you
always.
have the school group, and then you have the Wilson group that comes in.
Yes, yeah.
You know?
I'm
But
ready.
it was well done.
Yeah, thank you
Very
very
well
much.
done.
Appreciate
Very
it.
well done.
So, yeah.
Did everybody tell?